5 years ago, a settler family destroyed everything Cole Blackwood had. They burned his ranch, killed his loved ones, and left him with nothing but a thirst for revenge. Now, he's finally found them. Armed with his rifle and hardened by years of planning his vengeance, Cole rides toward their homestead in the Wyoming Territory. But what he finds there isn't what he expected. Two orphan girls, abandoned and alone, stand between him and his revenge. As he looks into their innocent eyes, he sees reflections of his own lost family. Can a man consumed by hatred learn to love again? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The leather-bound Bible lay in Cole's saddlebag, its edges blackened and brittle from the fire. Even now, 5 years later, the scent of smoke still clung to its pages. He'd found it in the ashes of his home, the gold leaf edges of its pages, melted and fused together, but the family record within somehow survived, a cruel reminder of everything he'd lost. Spring had just begun to touch the Wyoming Territory that year. Cole remembered the morning clearly, Sarah standing on their front porch, her honey-colored hair caught in the breeze, little Emma playing with her rag doll in the yard. Their small ranch wasn't much compared to some, but they'd built it together, him and Sarah, log by log, dream by dream. "Papa, look," Emma had called out that morning, showing him a cluster of wild crocuses she'd discovered poking through the last patches of snow. She was 6 then, all eyes and freckles, with her mother's gentle spirit and his stubborn determination. Cole had lifted her onto his shoulders, promising to help her plant a proper flower garden once the ground thawed completely. The Maxwell family arrived that same week. 4 wagons strong, they'd settled on the adjacent property, building their cabin near the creek that served as the property line. Cole had ridden out to welcome them, bringing Sarah's fresh-baked bread and offering to help them raise their barn. That's what neighbors did in Wyoming. Helped each other survive the harsh realities of frontier life. "The creek rights are yours," Thomas Maxwell had said, extending his hand. "We saw the water markers you put down. We'll draw from further upstream." His words seemed sincere then, his handshake firm and honest. Cole had no reason to doubt him. They'd even shared meals together, their families gathering for Sunday suppers, where Sarah would read from the family Bible before serving her famous venison stew. But as summer approached and the creek began to run low, things changed. Cole noticed the Maxwells had moved their water draw downstream, past his markers. When he rode out to discuss it, the warmth was gone from Thomas's eyes. 2 hired guns lounged on the Maxwells' porch, making their presence known. "There must be some mistake," Thomas had said, his tone flat. "Our deed shows clear water rights to this entire stretch. Perhaps you misunderstood the property lines when you settled here." Cole had returned home that evening to find Sarah worried. She'd overheard rumors in town about the Maxwells, whispers of similar disputes in other territories. "Maybe we should sell," she'd suggested, running her fingers over the Bible's worn cover. "Find somewhere more peaceful to raise Emma." But Cole had refused. This was their land, their home. He'd followed all the proper channels, filed the right papers. The law was on their side. Besides, Emma's flower garden was just beginning to bloom. The territory marshal was 3 days' ride away. Cole had set out early one morning, carrying all their documentation. Sarah made him promise to be careful, to avoid confrontation. Emma had pressed her favorite hair ribbon into his hand. For luck. He'd tucked it into his shirt pocket right next to his heart. 2 days into his journey, the sky had turned an ominous red-orange. At first he thought it was just another Wyoming sunset, until he saw the thick column of smoke rising from the direction of his ranch. He'd ridden hard through the night, his horse nearly collapsing beneath him, but he was too late. The ranch was still burning when he arrived. The flowers Emma had so carefully planted were trampled, the garden reduced to mud and ash. He found Sarah's body near what remained of their front door. She'd been shot trying to flee the house. Emma, Cole's hands tightened on his reins. The memory still raw enough to make his breath catch. They never found Emma's body in the ashes. The Bible was the only thing that survived, protected by the heavy oak chest Sarah kept it in. The family record page still showed their names, written in Sarah's elegant hand. Cole Blackwood, married to Sarah Hayes, blessed with Emma Rose. Below, that space waited for the children they'd planned to have, the future they'd dreamed of building. Now, 5 years later, Cole traced the fire-damaged edges of the Bible with calloused fingers. He'd changed since that day, transformed from a man who'd wanted nothing more than to tend his ranch and love his family into something harder, darker. The Maxwell family had disappeared shortly after the fire, moving from territory to territory, but Cole had tracked them. Slowly, methodically, he'd followed their trail, building his reputation and honing his skills until the mere mention of his name caused men to check their guns and lock their doors. Finally, after 5 long years, he'd found them. Or at least he'd found their homestead. But instead of Thomas Maxwell and his hired guns, all that remained were 2 young girls, alone in a house too big for them. The discovery had stopped him, cold, his hand frozen over his gun belt as memories of Emma crashed over him like a wave. The sheriff's report was yellowed now, its edges worn from the countless times Cole had unfolded and reread it. The official account was brief, clinical. Ranch fire, 2 casualties, suspected arson. What the report didn't capture was the hell of that night, the memories that still woke him in the dark hours before dawn. He'd been riding hard since seeing the smoke, his horse's flanks lathered with sweat, its breathing ragged. The closer he got, the more the sky ahead glowed that terrible orange-red. He remembered thinking, praying really, that maybe it was just the barn. They could rebuild a barn. But as he crested the final ridge, he saw the truth. Their home was an inferno. The heat hit him first, a wall of blistering air that made his horse rear and snort. Cole had jumped from the saddle before the animal fully steadied, his boots hitting the ground running. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning timber. He'd screamed their names. Sarah! Emma! His voice lost in the roar of the flames. That's when he saw her. Sarah lay crumpled near the front steps, her nightdress stained dark. Cole reached her in 3 strides, gathered her into his arms. Her skin was still warm, but her eyes were fixed on the burning house, wide with the terror of her final moments. A single bullet wound marked her chest, just above her heart. Emma! His daughter's name tore from his throat as he gently laid Sarah down. The front door was a wall of flame, but he charged toward it anyway. The heat drove him back, singeing his eyebrows, searing his lungs. He tried the back door, then a window, but the fire had claimed every entrance. Inside, he could hear the crash of falling timbers, the hungry roar of flames consuming everything he loved. Sheriff Matthews arrived an hour later, leading a group of men from town. By then, the house had collapsed in on itself, sending a fountain of sparks into the night sky. Cole sat in the dirt beside Sarah's body, her blood dried on his hands, his face streaked with soot and tears. "We'll find who did this," Matthews had promised, his voice gentle but firm. The older man had known Cole since he'd first arrived in the territory, had even helped him survey the property lines. There were tracks leading north, at least 4 horses. They didn't even try to hide their trail, but Cole barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on something in the ashes, a small, charred hand protruding from beneath a fallen beam. Emma's rag doll lay nearby, its dress burned away, its porcelain face cracked from the heat. The next few days passed in a blur. Neighbors came to help search the ruins, to prepare Sarah for burial. The sheriff took statements, collected evidence. Cole moved through it all like a man sleepwalking, speaking only when spoken to, eating only when food was pressed into his hands. It wasn't until he found the water rights documentation, partially burned but still legible in Sarah's oak chest, that something inside him shifted. The papers proved what he'd known all along. The Creek rights were his, legally filed and recorded. The Maxwells had no claim, no right to dispute them. This hadn't been about water at all. This had been about greed, about taking what they wanted simply because they could. The sheriff's report listed the case as unresolved, despite the clear boot prints matching Maxwell's hired guns, despite the bullet that matched guns they were known to carry. The Maxwells had friends in high places, connections that reached into the territorial government itself. There would be no justice through legal channels. That night, Cole buried the sheriff's report with his badge and his former life. He sold what remained of the ranch, bought a new horse and gun, and began to learn the skills he'd need. Each night, he read Sarah's Bible by firelight, not for comfort, but as a reminder. He added one final entry to the family record: justice deferred is not justice denied. The last item in the sheriff's report was a simple sketch of the crime scene, showing the position of Sarah's body and the burned remains they'd assumed were Emma's. But something about that sketch had always bothered Cole, like a splinter under his skin. The proportions weren't quite right. The details didn't quite match his memories of that night. Now, staring at the two girls in the Maxwell homestead, that old doubt gnawed at him again. There had never been absolute proof that the smaller body was Emma's. The fire had burned too hot, left too little to identify with certainty. The gun belt was plain black leather, unadorned except for the wear of years and a single notch carved near the buckle. Cole had bought it in a small trading post just outside of Cheyenne, his first purchase after selling the ranch. He'd never owned a gun belt before, had never needed one. The weight of it had felt foreign then, like something belonging to another man. An old bounty hunter named Marcus Shaw taught him how to use it. Shaw had found Cole in a saloon, drinking himself, numb, still wearing the soot-stained clothes from the fire. "You're holding that gun all wrong," the older man had said, watching Cole fumble with his newly purchased revolver. "Keep that up, you'll shoot your own foot off." Something in Cole's eyes must have spoken to Shaw, perhaps the raw grief, or maybe the smoldering anger beneath it. The bounty hunter took him under his wing, teaching him not just how to shoot, but how to survive in a world that ran on violence and retribution. "First rule," Shaw would say, drilling Cole in the bare hills outside town, is you don't draw unless you're ready to kill. This isn't about showing off or scaring folks. Every time that gun leaves leather, someone dies. Cole learned fast. The skills came naturally to him, as if his body had been waiting for this transformation. Shaw taught him to track, to read, sign, to understand the language of violence that ruled the territories. More importantly, he taught him patience. "Revenge is a long game," Shaw told him one evening, watching Cole practice his draw for the 100th time that day. "You go rushing. In hot, you'll end up dead. Take your time, learn everything you can, the moment will come." That first year, Cole changed. The gentle rancher who'd welcome newcomers with fresh bread died a little more each day, replaced by something harder. His hands, once calloused from ranch work, developed new calluses from endless hours of practicing with his gun. His eyes, which had once crinkled at Emma's laughter, grew cold and watchful. The first time he killed a man, it was self-defense. A drunk in a Laramie saloon didn't like the way Cole looked at him, drew his gun with clumsy confidence. Cole's response was pure reflex, the hours of practice taking over. His bullet found its mark before the drunk's gun cleared leather. That night, Cole carved the first and only notch in his gun belt, not to count coup like other gunfighters, but to remind himself of the man he'd become. Shaw approved of Cole's progress, but warned him about the path he'd chosen. "Getting good with a gun is like making a deal with the devil," he'd said. "The better you get, the more the devil owns you." "You sure this is what you want?" Cole's answer was to practice harder. He learned to do things with a gun that seemed to defy natural law, hitting coins thrown in the air, drawing faster than the eye could follow, firing with deadly accuracy from horseback. His reputation grew. People began to whisper about the quiet man in the black hat who moved like death itself. Shaw died that winter, caught by a stray bullet in a meaningless dispute over cards. Cole buried him in the frozen ground, using his mentor's own knife to carve a simple marker. The old bounty hunter's last words stayed with him. "Don't let the devil own all of you, boy. Keep a piece for yourself." But Cole had nothing left to keep. He spent the next 4 years building his legend, taking jobs that let him move through the territories, always searching for signs of the Maxwells. The gun belt that had once felt so foreign became a part of him, its weight as natural as breathing. He followed leads, traced rumors, built a network of information. His name became both a weapon and a shield. Most men would rather talk than face him. The few who tried to test his reputation learned why people spoke of him in whispers. Now, watching the two girls through his rifle scope, Cole touched the single notch in his gun belt. That first killing had marked the beginning of his transformation. These girls, with their innocent eyes and defenseless stance, marked its end. One way or another, everything would change after today. The trail map was more scar than paper now, creased and worn from countless foldings. Cole had started it 5 years ago, marking the Maxwell's movements in careful ink strokes. Each line represented a piece of information bought with threats, or bullets, each X a place they'd stayed. The marks spread across the territories like a spider's web, all leading to this moment. Dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as Cole broke camp. He'd spent the night 3 miles from the Maxwell homestead, using the darkness to study their routine. No sign of Thomas Maxwell or his hired guns, just those 2 girls and an elderly cook who left at sundown. Something wasn't right about that. Picture: his horse, a sturdy black gelding chosen for endurance rather than speed, sensed his unease. The animal's ears flicked back and forth, nostrils testing the wind. Cole had learned to trust those instincts. Animals could smell trouble before it showed itself. The map showed the Maxwell's pattern clear enough. They'd move into an area, cause trouble, then disappear just ahead of the law. 5 territories in 5 years, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and disputed claims. But this place was different. They'd bought it proper, paid full price according to the land office records. Cole rode slowly, following the creek that had once marked his property line. The water ran clear and strong here, fat with spring melt. A family could build a good life around a creek like this. He'd thought that once, back when hope came easier than breathing. His hand strayed to the map in his saddlebag. The last entry showed a curious thing: money withdrawn from banks across 3 territories, all flowing toward this place. The Maxwells were gathering resources, but for what? People like them didn't change their nature, didn't suddenly decide to play things straight. The homestead came into view, morning light catching on whitewashed walls. Someone had planted flowers along the front path, purple wildflowers that reminded him too much of Emma's garden. One of the girls was out front, the younger one hanging. Laundry on a rope strung between 2 posts. She couldn't have been more than 7, about Emma's age, when Cole pushed the thought away. He'd watched them for 3 days now, learning their habits. The older girl, maybe 12, kept house and did the cooking. The younger one tended a small vegetable patch and fed the chickens. They moved through their chores with the quiet efficiency of children who'd grown up too fast. No sign of parents, no sign of Thomas Maxwell or his men. Just 2 girls, alone in a house too big for them, living on the money that showed up regular as clockwork in a lockbox by the front gate. Cole had watched the stagecoach driver deliver it yesterday, had seen the older girl sign for it with practiced care. The map had other markings too, notes in the margins that told a larger story. Reports of Maxwell's wife dying 2 years back, rumors of him losing heavy at cards, taking loans from men you didn't want to owe. The pieces were there, but they formed a picture Cole wasn't sure he wanted to see. His horse stopped at the creek's edge, lowering its head to drink. Cole pulled out the map one last time, studying the inked lines that had guided him here. 5 years of his life, traced on this single sheet of paper. all his hate and hurt distilled into carefully marked routes and dates. The younger girl had noticed him now. She stood frozen by the laundry line, a wet sheet clutched in her small hands. Something in her stance, the way she held herself still as a spooked deer, spoke of someone used to disappointment, used to people leaving. Cole thought of Shaw's words about revenge being a long game. He'd played it patient, played it smart, followed every rule his mentor taught him. But Shaw had never said what to do when the enemy you'd spent years hunting turned out to be nothing but smoke, leaving behind something far more complicated than revenge. The map suddenly felt heavy in his hands, weighted with all the miles and memories it represented. Ahead, the girl still hadn't moved, watching him with eyes too old for her face. Behind her, the older sister had appeared in the doorway. One hand hidden in the folds of her skirt, probably holding a gun she was too young to know how to use properly. Cole carefully refolded the map and tucked it away. 5 years of planning had led him here, but nothing in all those careful ink lines had prepared him for this moment. The newspaper clippings rustled in his saddlebag like dry leaves. Cole had collected them over the years, each yellowed scrap telling part of his story. Mysterious gunman leaves 3 dead in Deadwood. Black Hat Rider delivers frontier justice. Devil's Shadow claims another victim. The papers painted him as something more than human, or maybe something less. Dismounting at the creek's edge, Cole kept his movements slow and deliberate. No need to frighten the girls more than his presence already had. The younger one still hadn't moved from the laundry line, her knuckles white around the wet sheet. The older sister's hand remained hidden in her skirt, and Cole could picture the revolver she was gripping, probably their father's piece, too big for her small hands. "Your father around?" Cole asked, his voice rough from disuse. He already knew the answer, but sometimes questions were really just a way of offering peace. "He'll be back soon," the older girl lied, chin raised in defiance. Her stance was all wrong for the gun she was holding, but her eyes held steady. "He doesn't like strangers." Cole nodded, remembering another headline. Maxwell Gang Dissolves. Leaders. Whereabouts unknown. The story had been brief, tucked away on page 6 of a Kansas paper. Thomas Maxwell, once the scourge of 3 territories, had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a string of debts and broken promises. "Name's Cole," he said, hooking his thumbs in his belt, carefully away from his gun. "Just passing through, looking for water and rest." Another lie to match hers. 5 years of hunting a man could teach you the value of patience, of approaching truth from angles. The younger girl moved then, ducking behind her sister. Through the gap in the doorway, Cole caught glimpses of a well-kept house, worn but clean, with a pair of small boots by the door and schoolbooks on the table. Not the home of a man on the run, but of children trying to hold on to something normal. One of the newspaper clippings had mentioned Maxwell's wife, dead from fever 2 years back. Another spoke of gambling debts, of money owed to men who collected with blood. The pieces were there, forming a picture Cole had been too focused on revenge to see clearly. "You can water your horse," the older girl said finally, her voice steadier than her hidden hand. "But then you should move on. We don't have anything worth taking." The words hit Cole like a physical blow. Is that what he'd become? The kind of man children assumed would rob them? The newspapers in his saddlebag whispered their answers. Ruthless gunman shows no mercy. Black Hat's vengeance claims 2 more. He led his horse to the creek, every movement measured and calm. The water reflected his image, the black hat, the gun belt, the hard eyes of a man who'd spent 5 years becoming death's shadow. But behind him, reflected in the same water, were 2 girls whose lives had been shaped by the same loss that drove him. The younger one had crept forward again, curiosity warring with caution. Something about her reminded him of Emma, not just her age, but the way she held herself, ready to dart away at the first sign of trouble. What would Emma think of the man her father had become? "You 2 have names?" he asked, still facing the Greek. Sometimes it was easier for people to talk to your back than your eyes. A pause, then the older girl spoke. I'm Sarah. This is Mary. The names weren't Maxwell. Cole knew every member of that family from his research. These girls were something else, something that didn't fit the story he'd been writing in blood for 5 years. Another headline flashed in his memory. Frontier. Justice or cold-blooded murder? The article had questioned his methods, suggested he'd become no better than the men he hunted. He'd burned that clipping, but the words remained, carved into his conscience like the notch on his gun belt. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Soon the elderly cook would arrive, bringing supplies and perhaps answers to questions Cole wasn't sure he wanted to ask. For now, he stood at the creek's edge, caught between the man he'd become and the father he used to be, while 2 young girls watched him with eyes that had seen too much of the world's darkness. Cole found the doll in the afternoon, half hidden beneath the porch steps. It was a simple thing, cloth body, yarn hair, button eyes sewn on with careful stitches, but it was the dress that stopped his heart. Faded blue cotton, dotted with tiny white flowers, exactly like the one Emma's doll had worn. He'd been checking the property's perimeter, telling himself he was looking for signs of Maxwell's return rather than watching over the girls. Sarah had gone inside to prepare lunch, while Mary tended to her vegetable patch, sneaking glances at him when she thought he wasn't looking. The doll must have fallen through a gap in the porch boards. Cole reached for it automatically, his calloused fingers gentle against the soft fabric. A memory hit him with physical force. Emma on her birthday, cradling her new doll, naming it Sarah after her mother. That's Grace, a small voice said behind him. Cole turned to find Mary standing there, dirt from the garden smudged on her apron. She'd managed to approach without him hearing, the first person to do that in 5 years. For a moment, he saw Emma's ghost in her stance, in the way she twisted her hands together. She fell last week, Mary continued, taking a cautious step closer. I couldn't reach her. Cole looked down at the doll, then back at Mary. The girl's eyes held that same mixture of hope and wariness he'd seen in every town he'd passed through, people caught between wanting to trust and knowing better. Grace, he repeated, testing the name. That's a good name for a doll. Our mama made her, Mary said, inching closer, before she got sick. Cole's hand tightened involuntarily around the doll. Your mama was Maxwell's wife? Mary shook her head. No, Mama and Papa died in a wagon accident 2 years ago. Uncle Thomas took us in. Uncle Thomas. The words rearranged everything Cole thought he knew. He remembered a line from one of his carefully collected newspaper clippings. Maxwell seen traveling with 2 young children. He dismissed it as irrelevant to his hunt. He was nice at first, Mary continued, close enough. Now to reach for the doll. Cole handed it to her carefully, watching as she hugged it to her chest. But then Aunt Catherine died, and he started drinking and gambling. One day he just didn't come back. Sarah appeared in the doorway, a kitchen knife held poorly but purposefully in her hand. Mary, she called, her voice sharp with warning. But Mary seemed to have decided to trust him, with the simple clarity children sometimes showed. Grace helps me be brave, she said, smoothing the doll's dress. Mama said that's what grace means, finding strength when you're scared. Cole felt the weight of his gun belt, the pressure of 5 years' worth of hatred and revenge. He thought of Emma's doll in the ashes, of Sarah's Bible with its promises of grace and redemption. Your uncle, he said, keeping his voice neutral. He send you money? Take care of you? Sarah moved onto the porch, still gripping the knife. Every month like clockwork. Mrs. Henderson brings supplies, and Mr. Jenkins from the bank handles the money. We manage. Cole heard what she wasn't saying. Wasn't. 2 girls, alone except for a daily cook, maintaining the fiction of an uncle's presence to keep themselves safe. Living on money that Thomas Maxwell probably owed to men who wouldn't care about leaving 2 children orphaned again. Mary held the doll up to him. Grace likes you, she declared with childhood certainty. She's usually shy around strangers. The button eyes stared at him, reflecting the afternoon sun. Cole remembered Emma saying similar things, attributing feelings and thoughts to her toys with absolute conviction. He'd smiled then, amused by her imagination. Now the memory felt like a knife between his ribs. "Mary," Sarah called again, softer this time. "Lunch is ready." Cole stepped back, needing distance from the doll's accusing eyes, from Mary's innocent trust, from the echoes of his own lost daughter in every movement these girls made. "You could eat with us," Mary offered, clutching Grace to her chest. "Sarah made stew. There's plenty." Before Cole could respond, a horse's hooves thundered in the distance. Sarah stiffened, and Mary's face went pale. They knew that sound wasn't Mrs. Henderson's wagon or Mr. Jenkins' buggy. Cole's hand moved to his gun, old instincts taking over. "Inside," he said quietly, "both of you, now." As the girls hurried into the house, Cole caught one last glimpse of the doll's button eyes glinting in the sun. 5 years of pursuing vengeance had led him here to this moment, to a choice between the man he'd become and the father he used to be. Night settled over the homestead like a heavy blanket, stars pricking through the darkness, one by one. Cole sat on the porch, his journal open on his knee. He'd started keeping it after Sarah died, a way to talk to her when the silence got too heavy. Tonight's entry was different from the others, filled with anger and revenge. The riders turned out to be nothing, just cowboys moving cattle, taking the wrong trail. But seeing those girls' faces, the fear in their eyes, something changed in me, Sarah. For 5 years I've been hunting the man who took you from me. Now I find his nieces, abandoned just like our Emma was alone that night. Mary looks so much like her sometimes, it hurts to breathe. He paused, pen hovering over paper. Inside, the girls slept. Sarah in a chair by the door, that kitchen knife still close at hand, Mary curled up in her bed with Grace, the doll held tight. They'd offered him supper, simple fare of beans and cornbread, served with the careful manners of children trying to act grown. They're surviving just barely. The older one, Sarah, she has your name, though I doubt Maxwell thought of that when he took them in. She carries herself like someone who's had to be strong too young, reminds me of you during that first hard winter on the ranch. The little one, Mary, she has Emma's way of looking at the world, seeing hope in broken things. Through the window, he could see the girls' shadows cast by lamplight. Sarah had finally succumbed to sleep, her head tilted at an awkward angle. Even in rest, her body was angled toward her sister, protective. "The money Maxwell sends, it's blood money, I'm sure of it. He's running from something bigger than me, leaving these children as shields, the same way he used his hired guns that night, letting them do his dirty work while he kept his hands clean." Cole flexed his trigger finger, feeling the familiar itch that had driven him for 5 years. The riders today had sparked something in the girls he recognized. The bone-deep fear of people who'd learned the world wasn't safe. He'd seen that. Same fear in every mirror since the night of the fire. "I should leave. The trail's still warm. Maxwell can't be more than 2 days ahead." But these girls, they've lost enough, Sarah. Lost their parents, lost their aunt, lost whatever stability their uncle provided before his demons caught up with him. They're holding on by threads, pretending for the townspeople that everything's fine, that their uncle's just away on business. A floorboard creaked inside. Cole's hand moved to his gun before he recognized Mary's soft footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, Grace clutched to her chest, eyes heavy with sleep. "Bad dream?" he asked quietly. She nodded, then surprised him by settling on the porch step beside him. "Grace gets scared sometimes," she whispered, careful not to wake her sister. "She likes it when someone's watching over her." Cole closed, his journal tucking it away. "Your uncle," he said carefully. "He ever tell you where he was going?" Mary shook her head, her small fingers straightening Grace's dress. "He cried when he left. I never saw him cry before, not even when Aunt Catherine died. He said he was sorry, that he'd send money, that someday he'd make it right." She looked up at Cole, moonlight catching the tears in her eyes. "Grown-ups always say that, but they don't come back." The words hit him like physical blows. How many adults had failed these girls? Parents dead, aunt dead, uncle fled, leaving them to face the world alone, just like he'd failed Emma, not being there when she needed him most. "I'll take the first watch," he said, shrugging off his coat and wrapping it around her small shoulders. "Grace can get some sleep." Mary smiled, a quick flash in the darkness. "She trusts you," she said, as if sharing an important secret. "She says you have sad eyes like Papa did after Mama died, but kind ones too." Cole watched as she curled up on the porch step, his coat dwarfing her small frame. Within minutes, her breathing steadied into sleep. He pulled out his journal one last time. "I can't leave them, Sarah. Maybe this is where the trail was leading all along. Not to Maxwell, but to a chance to protect what he abandoned. To be the father I couldn't be for Emma, the man I used to. Be before grief turned me into something else. Watch over us, love, all of us." Morning found Cole still on the porch, his coat draped over Mary, who'd slept there all night. Sarah emerged first, worry lines softening when she saw her sister safe. She studied Cole with eyes too old for her face, then disappeared back inside. Moments later, the smell of coffee drifted through the open door. "Thought you might want some," she said, offering him a steaming cup. "It's not very good. I'm still learning." The coffee was bitter and weak, but Cole drank it like it was the finest brew in the territory. "It's perfect," he said, watching something like pride flicker across her face. Mary stirred, blinking awake. She pulled something from Grace's dress pocket, a folded piece of paper covered in the careful drawings of a child. "I made this," she said, pressing it into Cole's hand, "while you were sleeping." But Cole hadn't slept. He'd kept watch all night, his mind spinning with memories and possibilities. Now, unfolding the paper, he felt his throat tighten. Mary had drawn 3 figures in front of a house, 2 small ones holding hands, and a taller one wearing a black hat. "That's me and Sarah," she explained, pointing, "and that's you. Grace helped me with the hat." Sarah tensed, but Cole just stared at the drawing. The last time someone had drawn him into their family picture, it had been Emma, back when. His hat was brown and his eyes still knew how to smile. "Are you really staying?" Mary asked, hope making her voice tremble. "Grace says you are." Cole looked at Sarah, seeing the fear battling with desperate want in her eyes. These girls had learned the hard way not to trust in permanence, not to believe in promises made by adults who disappeared. "Thought I might," he said carefully, "if that's all right with your sister." Sarah's hands twisted in her apron. "Why?" she asked, steel beneath the softness. "What do you want from us?" The question deserved honesty. Cole owed them that much. "I knew your uncle," he said, watching understanding dawn in Sarah's eyes. "Been looking for him a long time. To hurt him." Mary's small voice quavered. Cole looked at the drawing again, at the simple trust shown in those crayon lines. "That was the plan," he admitted. "But plans change. Sometimes they have to." Sarah moved closer, one hand resting protective on Mary's shoulder. "He did something bad to you, didn't he? That's why you came." "He did," Cole said. "No point hiding it. But that's between him and me. Doesn't have anything to do with you two." "Everything has to do with us," Sarah said, suddenly sounding every bit her 12 years. "We're all that's left. If you're staying to hurt him through us—" "I'm staying to protect you," Cole interrupted, surprising himself with the truth of it. "Your uncle's in trouble. Deep trouble, from what I can piece together. When it finds him, it might come looking here first." Mary clutched Grace tighter. "Bad men. Maybe," Cole said gently, "but they'd have to get through me first." Sarah studied him, weighing his words against her experience of adults who failed them. "You were a father once," she said. "Not a question." Cole nodded, his hand creasing the drawing slightly. "Had a daughter. About Mary's age. What happened to her?" "Lost her. Same night I lost her mother." Mary moved then, pressing against his side like she belonged there. "Grace says you won't leave us. She promises." Cole felt something crack inside his chest, like ice breaking up on a spring river. He looked at the drawing again. 3 figures in front of a house, a family sketched in crayon and hope. Grace is right, he said, meeting Sarah's wary gaze. I won't leave. Whatever's coming, we'll face it together. Sarah's shoulders dropped slightly, the first real relaxation he'd seen in her. The coffee will get cold, she said, turning toward the house. But she left the door open behind her. An invitation. Cole carefully folded the drawing and tucked it into his shirt pocket, right next to his heart, where Emma's hair ribbon had once rested. Sometimes he realized revenge wasn't about making others pay. Sometimes it was about refusing to let the past steal any more futures. The letter arrived with Mrs. Henderson, the elderly cook who brought supplies each day. Cole watched from the barn as she handed it to Sarah, noting how the woman's usually cheerful face had gone pale. The envelope bore no return address, just a black cross drawn in the corner. He waited until Mrs. Henderson left before approaching the house. Sarah stood on the porch, the letter trembling in her hands. "It's for Uncle Thomas," she said, but made no move to open it. Cole gently took the envelope, feeling its weight, more than just paper inside. "Mind if I take a look?" Sarah nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Inside, Cole found a playing card, the ace of spades, edges charred, and a note written in careful, educated script. "Time's up, Maxwell. The money you've been sending these precious nieces of yours barely covers the interest. 3 days. Bring the full amount, or we'll collect it our own way. Children fetch a good price in certain markets." Cole's hands tightened on the paper, crumpling its edges. He'd seen threats like this before, back when he'd been hunting Maxwell. The man had borrowed heavy from the Kingston gang, notorious for their creativity in collecting debts. "Sarah," he called softly, "how long have these been coming?" "Third. When," she whispered, "started last week. I didn't want to scare Mary." "Does Mrs. Henderson know what's in them?" Sarah shook her head. "But she knows something's wrong. She offered to let us stay with her in town, but—" She trailed off, looking at the house her parents had died to give them. "This is all we have left." From inside, they heard Mary singing to her doll, innocent and unaware. The sound hit Cole like a physical blow, reminding him of Emma's voice on that last morning. "Pack some bags," he said, tucking the letter into his coat. "Just in case, but you're not going anywhere." His voice hardened. "And neither are they." He spent the afternoon preparing. First, walking the property's perimeter, noting approaches and blind spots. The house sat well, with good views in most directions. Previous owners had built it smart, with gun ports disguised as decorative gaps in the walls. Sarah watched him work, asking questions that showed she understood more than a child should about defense. "Uncle Thomas taught us to shoot," she said, bringing out a pair of revolvers from a hidden compartment in the pantry. "Said we might need 2 someday." The guns were well maintained, but too large for her hands. Cole spent an hour teaching her proper grip and stance, remembering how Shaw had taught him. "Only if you have to," he said. "You protect Mary first, shoot second." As dusk approached, Cole saw dust on the horizon. 3 riders, moving fast and confident. Kingston's men never lacked for confidence. "Inside," he told Sarah. "Lock the doors. Don't come out no matter what you hear." She grabbed his arm, surprising him. "Don't die," she said fiercely. "We can't lose anyone else." Cole touched the drawing in his pocket, thinking of Emma, of Sarah's Bible, of second chances that came disguised as threats. "Not planning to," he said. "Got too much to live for now." The riders pulled up short when they saw him on the porch. Their leader, a man with a scarred face and dead eyes, looked him over. "This ain't your business, friend." "Actually, it is." Cole kept his voice calm, his hands loose at his sides. "Maxwell's gone. Whatever he owes you, these girls don't factor into it." "Like hell they don't." Scarface spat. "Kingston paid good money to find them. They're his insurance now." "No," Cole said simply. "They're not. It happened fast, the way gun battles usually did. Scarface was good, but Cole was better. Had been better since Shaw taught him that. Revenge required more than just anger, required skill and timing, and the willingness to kill without hesitation. When it was over, 2 riders lay still in the dirt. The third fled back toward town, his horse running flat out. Cole knew he should feel something: regret, satisfaction, the old familiar surge of violence fulfilled. Instead, he felt only relief that the girls were safe. He found them in the pantry, Sarah holding Mary tight, Grace the doll squeezed between them. At his footsteps, Sarah raised one of the revolvers with shaking hands. "It's over," he said softly. "You're safe." Mary broke free first, running to him. He caught her automatically, lifting her up like he used to do with Emma. Sarah followed more slowly, the gun dropping to her side. "They'll send more," she said. Not a question. Cole nodded, feeling Mary's tears dampen his shirt. "Yes, but we'll be ready." He looked at Sarah, seeing the strength beneath her fear. Together, outside, the sun set on 3 fresh graves, markers. For the day, Cole Blackwood stopped being the man who hunted Maxwell and became the man who protected his nieces instead. Cole's Winchester had been his constant companion for 5 years, its stock worn smooth from use, its barrel blued with countless cleanings. Now he held it out to Sarah, watching her eyes widen at the trust implied. "It's lighter than Uncle Thomas's." "Shotgun," she said, handling the rifle with careful respect. "Easier to aim, too." Cole adjusted her grip, positioning the stock against her shoulder. "Remember what I taught you about breathing?" They stood behind the house, empty cans lined up on the fence. Mary sat on the porch steps watching. Grace clutched to her chest. 3 days had passed since the riders, and Cole had used every moment to prepare. "In slow out slower," Sarah recited. "Squeeze, don't pull." The rifle cracked and a can spun off the fence. Sarah's face lit up with fierce pride, reminding Cole so much of his wife during their early days on the ranch. His Sarah had been a good shot too, had to be, with wolves and raiders always testing the borders. "Again," he said, setting up another can, "until it's memory, not thought." Word had reached town about the shooting. Mrs. Henderson brought news with the supplies, Kingston's men gathering at the saloon, asking questions about the girls, about Cole. The banker, Jenkins, had stopped delivering the monthly funds, too scared to take sides. "Cole?" Mary's small voice drew his attention. "Will they come at night?" He looked at her, seeing the fear she tried to hide behind Grace's yarn hair. "Some might," he answered honestly. No point shielding them from truth they'd already learned. Too young. That's why we're getting ready. They'd spent the previous day fortifying the house, boarding windows, stockpiling supplies, creating escape routes. Sarah had shown him the hidden spaces their uncle had built, paths under the floorboards and through the walls. Maxwell might have been a bastard, but he'd planned for trouble. "Like this?" Sarah's voice brought him back. She'd reloaded smoothly, just as he'd taught her. Perfect. He squeezed her shoulder, feeling her lean into the touch. "Try the far can this time." The Winchester cracked again, but this shot went wide. Sarah frowned, disappointed. "I'm not good enough." "You're better than I was at your age," Cole said. "It's not about being perfect. It's about being ready." They'd seen riders watching the house from distant ridges, counting windows, measuring. Approaches. Kingston's men, learning the ground before they tried again. Cole had taught the girls to spot dust trails, to count horses by their tracks, to know when watchers were present. "What if—" Sarah hesitated, lowering the rifle. "What if Uncle Thomas comes back? Would you leave?" The question carried weight. Beyond its words, Cole looked at Mary, still holding Grace, then back at Sarah. "No," he said firmly. "Whatever happens, I'm not leaving you too." "Promise," Mary called from the porch. "Promise." He touched the drawing in his pocket. His new talisman. "Some promises you keep no matter what." Sarah nodded, raising the rifle again. This time the Farcan flew off the fence, her aim true and steady. Cole felt pride warm his chest, followed by an ache. These girls shouldn't have to learn such things. Shouldn't need to know how to shoot and hide and watch for danger. But the world didn't care what should be. It dealt in what was, in hard choices and harder consequences. He'd learned that the night he lost his family. Sarah and Mary had learned it watching their parents' wagon disappear over a cliff, learning it again, when their uncle abandoned them to save himself. "One more round," he said, setting up fresh cans, "then we'll check the escape routes again." As Sarah took aim, Cole caught movement on the distant ridge. 2 riders, watching. They'd come soon, probably at night, probably in force. Kingston's reputation for collecting debts was built on examples made of those who crossed him. But they didn't know what Cole knew, that sometimes the most dangerous predator was a parent protecting their young. He'd spent 5 years becoming Death's shadow, learning skills he'd thought were for revenge. Now those same skills would serve love instead. "I hit them all," Sarah's voice rang with triumph. Cole smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's my girl," he said, the words coming naturally now. On the porch, Mary beamed, and even Grace seemed to smile with her button eyes. The watchers on the ridge turned away, riding back to report. Let them come, Cole thought. They'd learn. What Shaw had taught him years ago, that the deadliest fighter wasn't the one with nothing to lose, but the one with everything to protect. The stew bubbled in the cast-iron pot, filling the kitchen with warmth and the promise of comfort. Sarah stood at the stove, stirring carefully the way her mother had taught her. Besides her, Mary set the table for 3, a number that felt right now, though. She couldn't say exactly when that had happened. "Smells good," Cole said from the doorway, his rifle propped in the corner where he could reach it quick. He'd taken to leaving his gun belt on even at meals, but his eyes were softer now when he looked at them. "Mama's recipe," Sarah said, pride mixing with old grief in her voice. She always said good food makes a house a home. They gathered around the table, this odd family born of loss and chance. Mary had put Grace in a 4th chair, propped up with books so she could see over the table's edge. Cole smiled at that, the kind of smile that made the hard lines around his eyes fade. "We need to say grace," Mary insisted, holding out her small hands. "Mama always said that blessings shared are blessings doubled." Sarah finished, taking her sister's hand. She reached for Cole's calloused one, completing the circle. Cole's throat worked for a moment before he spoke. "Been a while since I said grace," he admitted. "My Sarah, she used to lead it." "You can say it like she did," Mary encouraged, squeezing his hand. "Grace says it's good to remember." Cole closed his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried years of stored-up prayers. "Lord, thank you for this food, for the hands that prepared it, and for the love that shares it. Watch over us and keep us safe through whatever comes. Amen." "Amen," the girls echoed, and for a moment the kitchen felt full of all their missing people. Cole's Sarah and Emma, the girls' parents, even the aunt they'd lost too soon. They ate, slowly, savoring both food and company. Sarah had made dumplings like her mother used to, and Cole praised them so sincerely she blushed with pleasure. Mary told stories about Grace's adventures during the day, making them all laugh despite the tension that had filled the house since the riders came. "Tell us about your Emma," Mary said suddenly, making Cole's spoon pause halfway to his mouth. "Was she like me?" Sarah started to shush her sister, but Cole shook his head. "It's all right." He set his spoon down carefully. "She was a lot like you, actually. Same age, same way of seeing good in things. She had a doll, too, named Sarah after her mama. Like Grace is named after our mama," Mary said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Did she like to draw, too, all the time? Covered every spare paper we had with pictures of horses and flowers." Cole smiled at the memory. "She was just starting to learn her letters when—" He stopped, but the girls knew how that sentence ended. They were too familiar with unfinished stories. "We could put her picture up," Sarah suggested softly, "next to Mama and Papa's, so she's not forgotten." Cole reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out 2 things, Mary's drawing and a small daguerreotype he always carried. The photograph showed a woman with kind eyes holding a laughing girl with wild curls. "My Sarah and Emma," he said, passing it carefully to them. "Taken just a month before." Mary studied the image intently. "She looks happy," she said finally, "like she knew she was loved." "She was," Cole's voice roughened. "Every day of her life she knew that." Like us, Mary said with a child's simple certainty. We know, too. Cole looked at them then, really looked at them. These two girls who'd walked into the space Emma's. Death had left and somehow made it feel like healing instead of betrayal. Yes, he said, you do. Sarah began clearing the dishes, but she paused to squeeze Cole's shoulder as she passed. The gesture was small, but spoke volumes. Trust given and received. Family found instead of made. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Emma had loved to draw. Somewhere out there, Kingston's men were planning, watching, waiting. But in here, in this warm kitchen with its shared meal and shared love, Cole finally understood what Shaw had meant about keeping part of himself from the devil. He'd kept his heart, though he hadn't known it until two girls with old souls and Grace's button eyes showed him where to look. The letter fell from between the pages of an old ledger Sarah had been showing him, Maxwell's record of debts and payments. It was written on expensive paper, the kind used by banks and lawyers, dated just days before the fire that had destroyed Cole's ranch. "What's that?" Sarah asked, seeing how still Cole had gone. His hands shook as he unfolded it. The letterhead belonged to Kingston's Banking and Loan, the same outfit now threatening the girls, but it was the signature at the bottom that stopped. His heart, Thomas Maxwell's name, followed by his wife Catherine's. "Dear Mr. Kingston," Cole read aloud, his voice growing hoarser with each word. "We cannot in good conscience proceed with your plan. While we understand the profit to be made from the water rights, we will not be party to violence against the Blackwood family. Their claim is legal and just. More importantly, they have a young child. We were wrong to consider this scheme, and we withdraw completely. The money you advanced is enclosed in full." Uncle Thomas wrote that. Sarah moved closer, peering at the letter. "About your family?" Cole nodded, memories rearranging themselves like pieces of a broken mirror, finally showing a true reflection. "Kingston wanted my water rights. Must have approached Maxwell about helping him get them." His voice roughened. "But your uncle backed out, tried to stop it. Then why?" Sarah stopped, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Kingston did it anyway, and blamed Uncle Thomas, making sure I'd hunt the wrong man." Cole's laugh held no humor. 5 years chasing Maxwell while Kingston walked free. Mary appeared in the doorway. Grace clutched to her chest. "Is that why the bad men are coming? Because of what happened to your family?" Cole looked at the letter again, seeing the rest. Of the story written between its lines, "Kingston's been playing a long game. Used me to chase Maxwell away from his own kin, then moved in to collect on the debts he forced your uncle to take on. To get to us," Sarah said quietly, "because we're all Uncle Thomas has left." The truth of it hit Cole like a physical blow. He'd been so blind, so focused on revenge, that he hadn't seen the larger pattern. Kingston had orchestrated everything, the fire, the chase, even Cole's arrival here. Had probably counted on him killing Maxwell's nieces in his quest for vengeance. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling another paper from the ledger. This one was newer, the ink barely dry. "Uncle Thomas sent it with last month's money." The note was brief, written in a shaking hand. "Kingston knows where you are. I can't hold him off anymore. When he comes, and he will, look in the old chapel. What you find there will be worth more than what I owe him, enough to keep you safe. I'm sorry for everything, all of it." "The chapel?" Cole looked up sharply. "What chapel?" "In the woods," Mary said. "Behind the house. Mama and Papa got married there." She hugged Grace tighter. "We don't go there anymore. Uncle Thomas said it wasn't safe." Cole's mind raced. Maxwell had been clever, using Kingston's greed against him. Whatever was hidden in the chapel, it was valuable enough to make the banker show his hand. "We need to—" he started, but a sound cut him off. Hoofbeats, lots of them, approaching fast. "Upstairs," he ordered, grabbing his rifle. "The hiding place we practiced. Now." Sarah snatched the letters but hesitated at the stairs. "Cole, if Kingston killed your family—" "Go," he said firmly. "We'll talk after." But Mary turned back, running to hug him fiercely. "Promise you won't die," she whispered. "Grace says we need you." Cole hugged her back, then gently pushed her toward Sarah. "Grace is right," he said. "I've got too much to live for now." As the girls disappeared upstairs, Cole moved to the window. At least 8 riders approaching, Kingston himself in the lead. The banker was a tall man, with a politician's smile and eyes like empty wells. Cole touched the letters in his pocket, feeling the weight of truth they carried. 5 years of hatred redirected in an instant, from Maxwell to the man who'd really destroyed his family. But this time, revenge wasn't his primary motivation. He thought of Sarah's strength and Mary's trust, of shared meals and target practice, of Grace watching over them all with her button eyes. He'd come here hunting the past, but found a future instead. Whatever was hidden in that chapel might save the girls from Kingston, but first they had to survive the night. Cole checked his gun, then moved to the door. He'd spent 5 years becoming Death's shadow, learning skills he thought were for revenge. Now he'd use them to protect his new family from the man who'd stolen his first one. Kingston's voice carried across the yard. "Blackwood! Let's talk about those girls you're protecting." Cole's hand tightened on his rifle. Sometimes, he reflected, the truth came too late to prevent tragedy. And sometimes, it came just in time to prevent another one. The pocket watch had been his father's, passed down on Cole's wedding day. He hadn't looked at it since the night of the fire, couldn't bear to see its hands frozen at 9:47, the moment his world had ended. Now he held it in his palm, feeling its dead weight as Kingston and his men spread out across the yard. "Got a proposition for you, Blackwood," Kingston called out. His voice carried the smooth confidence of a man used to buying whatever he wanted. "Way I see it, we're after the same thing. Maxwell played us both." Cole said nothing, watching through the gun port as the riders positioned themselves. 8 men, all hardened killers. The odds weren't good, but he'd faced worse. "Those girls, in there," Kingston continued, "they're the key to finding what Maxwell stole from me. You help me get it. I'll tell you exactly what happened the night your family died." The watch felt heavy in Cole's hand. He'd carried it all these years, letting its stopped hands measure out his grief and rage. Now, listening to Kingston's oily promises, he finally understood what Shaw had meant about revenge being a long game. "I already know what happened," Cole called back. "Got the letter right here. The one where Maxwell refused to help you steal my water rights." A pause, then Kingston's laugh, sharp and cruel as a coyote's bark. "Clever Thomas, keeping that insurance. Doesn't change anything, though. Those girls are coming with me. One way or another." Upstairs, Cole heard the faintest creak of floorboards. Sarah and Mary in their hiding place, listening to every word. He thought of them holding each other, trying to be brave, thought of Emma, alone and afraid on that last night. "No," Cole said simply, "they're not." The first shot came from Kingston's left-hand man, splintering wood near Cole's head. He returned fire with practiced precision, hearing a grunt of pain and the thud of a body hitting dirt. "Burn it!" Kingston shouted. "Burn it all!" The words hit Cole like physical blows, memory, overlapping reality. Fire arrows arced through the dusk, their flames bright against the darkening sky. One caught in the roof shingles, another in the porch boards. But this time was different. This time, Cole wasn't miles away, helpless to save what he loved. This time he was ready. The first man to rush the porch took Cole's bullet in the chest. The second made it 3 steps further before falling. Through the gun smoke, Cole saw Kingston retreating behind his horse, shouting orders as flames began to spread. "Cole!" Sarah's voice, tight with fear. "The back roof's catching!" He taught them what to do, drilled them until the escape route was memory. But now, with flames licking up the walls and bullets splintering wood around them, Cole knew he had one chance to make this right. The watch in his hand ticked once, suddenly and impossibly, as if time itself was holding its breath. "Sarah!" he called up. "Get to the chapel, whatever's there, find it!" "What about you?" "I'll hold them here. Give you time." He fired again, dropping another of Kingston's men. "Go now!" He heard them moving, following the hidden path they'd practiced. Kingston's men were spreading out, trying to circle the house. Soon they'd see the girls running for the trees, unless he gave them something else to shoot at. Cole touched the watch one last time, then set it on the windowsill. Its single tick had been enough, a reminder that time didn't stop with tragedy, that love was stronger than revenge. He burst through the front door firing, drawing their attention. Bullets whined past him as he dove for cover behind a water trough. Kingston's voice rose above the gunfire. "Get him!" Through the flames and smoke, Cole saw two small figures dart from the back of the house toward the tree line. His heart swelled with fierce pride. They ran just as he taught them, low and fast, using cover. A bullet found his shoulder, spinning him against the trough. Another creased his ribs, but he kept firing, kept their eyes on him until Sarah and Mary vanished into the darkness. On the windowsill, the old watch finally fell, its crystal shattering on the porch boards. Cole smiled through the pain. Some things had to break before they could start ticking again. Kingston's voice carried across the yard. "After those girls, don't let them reach the chapel." Cole pushed himself up, ignoring the blood soaking his shirt. He'd spent 5 years learning to be Death's shadow. Time to show Kingston's men what that really meant. The bandana had been white once, a gift from Mary, who'd found it in Sarah's sewing box. Now it was stained crimson where Cole had pressed it against his shoulder, the blood making dark patterns like a map of all the choices that had led him here. He moved through the burning night like a ghost, using skills Shaw had taught him. 3 of Kingston's men lay dead or dying. The others had split up, 2 following the girls, 3 trying to flank Cole's position. Kingston himself had vanished toward the chapel, no doubt guessing what Maxwell had hidden there. The fire painted everything in shades of orange and black, casting twisted shadows across the yard. Cole touched the blood-soaked bandana, using the pain to sharpen his focus. He could hear Mary's voice in his head. "Promise you won't die." A twig snapped to his left. Cole fired without looking, rewarded by a grunt of pain and the sound of someone stumbling. Shaw's first lesson. In the dark, trust your ears more than your eyes. "Give it up, Blackwood," one of Kingston's men called. "Boss just wants the girls. You can walk away." Cole's answer was a bullet that silenced the voice forever. 5 years of rage and skill channeled into each shot, but this time directed at the real authors of his pain. He worked his way toward the chapel, following the path Sarah and Mary would have taken. The old building rose ahead, its weathered cross stark against the fire-lit sky. A shot rang out, the bullet splintering bark. Near Cole's head, "Found the girls, boss." A voice called from inside the chapel. "Got something else too, some kind of strongbox." Cole's heart clenched. He pictured Sarah and Mary cornered in the chapel, frightened but brave. Thought of Emma, trapped by flames with nowhere to run. The bandana in his hand seemed to pulse with his racing heartbeat. "Bring them out," Kingston's voice held triumph. "Let Blackwood watch this time." This time. The words confirmed what Cole had always suspected. Kingston had been there the night his family died, watching as his men burned Cole's world to ashes. The chapel door opened. Sarah came first, pushing Mary behind her. Kingston followed, a cocked revolver pressed to Sarah's head. 2 of his men flanked them, one holding a metal strongbox. "Should have seen your face that night," Kingston called to Cole. "Riding in all desperate, too late to save them. Almost felt sorry for you. Almost." Cole stepped into the open, letting them see him. His gun hand was steady, but even he couldn't take them all before Kingston could pull the trigger. "Let them go," he said quietly. "Whatever Maxwell took, it's yours. Just let the girls walk away." Kingston laughed. "Still don't understand, do you? This was never about money. It's about power. About taking what you want and making sure everyone knows the cost of defying you. Like you took my family? Your wife tried to run," Kingston said, smiling at the pain in Cole's eyes. "The girl called for you. Right up until the smoke." The shot took Kingston in the shoulder, making him stagger, but it didn't come from Cole's gun. Sarah had moved the instant Kingston started talking, twisting away while drawing the revolver Cole had taught her to. a hide in her skirt. Everything happened at once. Mary broke free, running toward Cole. Kingston's remaining men raised their weapons. The strongbox hit the ground, springing open to reveal papers and banknotes. Cole's world narrowed to single instants, each as clear as the blood on his bandana. Sarah, her form perfect as she fired again. Mary reaching him, pressing her face into his side. Kingston's men, caught between protecting their boss and grabbing the scattered money. His own bullets, finding homes in throats and hearts. When it ended, Kingston lay bleeding in the chapel doorway, reaching for his fallen gun. Sarah stood over him, shaking but determined, Cole's lessons evident in her stance. "You're under my gun now," she said, using Cole's own words from their practice sessions. "Don't move." Cole gathered Mary closer, feeling her trembling against him. "You did good," he whispered. "Both of you did so good." "Cole?" Mary's voice quavered. "Grace says it's over now. Really over." He looked at Kingston, seeing not the monster who'd haunted his dreams, but just a man, greedy and cruel and now powerless. The bandana slipped from his fingers, its blood-drawn patterns fading into the dark. "Yeah," he said softly. "Grace is." "Right, it's over." Sarah kept her gun trained on Kingston as Cole bound him with his own belt. They could hear horses approaching, townspeople drawn by the fire and gunshots. Soon there would be questions, explanations, the slow grinding of frontier justice. But for now, Cole held his girls close, feeling their hearts beat against him. The bandana lay forgotten in the dirt, its stains no longer a map of vengeance, but a marker for the night. Cole Blackwood chose love over hatred, and found his heart could hold both past and future without breaking. The photographer set up his camera in front of the rebuilt porch, adjusting the lens, while Sarah smoothed Mary's dress for the 10th time. Cole watched them fuss, remembering another family photo taken long ago. But this time, instead of grief, the memory brought a gentle ache of healing. "Grace needs to be in it too," Mary insisted, clutching her doll. The photographer smiled, used to the strange requests of children. Cole just nodded. Grace had earned her place in this family portrait. 3 weeks had passed since the night of fire and revelation. Kingston sat in the territorial prison, his confession filling pages of court documents. The story had spread quickly. How Cole Blackwood, the notorious gunman, had turned protector instead of destroyer. How 2 young girls had helped bring a banking empire of corruption crashing down. "Everyone ready?" The photographer ducked under his black cloth. "Stand still now." Cole felt Mary's small hand slip into his, Sarah moving closer on his other side. His wounds were healing well. The doctor said he'd been lucky. But the real healing had happened in moments like this, in shared meals and quiet evenings, in the gradual transformation of a house into a home. "Found something yesterday," Sarah said after the photographer left. She pulled a creased envelope from her apron pocket. "In Uncle Thomas's strongbox, under all those bank documents." Cole recognized his wife's handwriting on the envelope, his heart skipping. Inside was a letter dated the morning of the fire, never delivered. "My dearest Cole, Emma misses you terribly. She's made you a new drawing, says it's for luck, to help with your meeting with the marshal. I've been thinking about what you said, about standing our ground. You're right, of course. This is our home. But more than that, it's where we're raising our daughter to be strong and true, like her father. All my love, Sarah." Mary leaned against him as he read, somehow knowing he needed the comfort. The new family photograph would sit on the mantel beside the old one, not replacing those memories, but adding to them, proving that love could grow even from ashes. "Uncle Thomas wrote too," Sarah said quietly. "Before everything, said he was sorry for being a coward, for running instead of facing what he'd done. The bank papers proved Kingston's crimes, but this," she touched the letter from Cole's Sarah, "this proved something more important." Cole carefully folded his wife's last letter. "What's that?" "That good people can lose their way, Sarah. said wisdom beyond her years in her voice. But they can find it again too. The afternoon sun painted the porch in shades of gold, reminding Cole of another porch, another life. But this time there was no bitterness in the memory. His Sarah would have loved these girls, would have seen how they'd helped heal the broken places in him. Medri had been setting the table inside, 3 plates, with Grace propped in the 4th chair as always. Now she called out, "Cole! Sarah! Supper's ready!" They ate together, as they had every night since the shooting. The town had rallied around them, helping rebuild the fire damage, bringing food and supplies. Mrs. Henderson still came daily, but now she stayed for meals sometimes, her weathered face softening at the sight of their growing family. "Garda, letter from the bank today," Cole said as they finished eating. "The territories seized Kingston's assets. They're offering compensation to his victims." He paused, watching their faces. "Enough to buy a proper ranch, if that's something you girls might want." Sarah's eyes widened. "You mean stay here? All of us? If you'll have me," Cole said softly. "Proper paperwork and all. Make it legal." Mary launched herself at him, nearly knocking over her chair. "Grace says yes. She says yes for all of us." Sarah moved more slowly, but her hug was just as fierce. Cole held them both, feeling the last pieces of his heart click back into place. Tomorrow, they'd go into town, file the adoption papers he'd been carrying for a week, build something permanent from all their broken pieces. The new family photograph would show the transformation, not just in the obvious ways, the smiles and clasped hands, but in the subtle ones. The way Sarah stood straighter, confidence replacing fear, the joy in Mary's eyes as she held Grace. And in Cole's face, the hard lines of the gunman softening into something closer to the father he'd once been, something closer to the father he was becoming again. The deed lay on the kitchen table, its fresh ink gleaming in the morning light. Blackwood Ranch, it read, and below that 3 names, Cole's, Sarah's and Mary's, a family written in legal script, made official by more than just paper and ink. "It's really ours?" Mary pressed her finger to her name, careful not to smudge the still-drying ink. Grace sat propped in her lap, overseeing the moment with her button eyes. "Every acre," Cole confirmed. The compensation from Kingston seized. Assets had been more than generous. Enough to buy the best ranch in the territory. 2,000 acres of prime grazing land, with a creek that ran strong all year round. Though we'll have to work hard to make it prosper. Sarah traced the property lines on the attached map. The ranch stretched from the old chapel, now restored as a quiet place for remembering, all the way to the woods, where they'd found a family of deer living undisturbed. Somewhere in between they'd build their future. "I've been thinking," she said, that new confidence steady in her voice. "We could raise horses, not just cattle. There's good money in training them for the cavalry." Cole smiled, remembering how quickly she'd taken to riding. She had a natural way with horses, gentle but firm, much like how she'd learned to be with Mary. "Sounds like you've got plans." "Mary's good with the foals," Sarah continued, "and you know everything about running a ranch. We could make something special here." They'd already started. The barn was half-built, townspeople helping raise the heavy beams. Mary's vegetable garden had expanded, and Sarah had planted flowers along the front path, purple wildflowers like the ones Emma had loved. "Cole," Mary's voice was thoughtful, "can we make a special place? For Emma and your Sarah?" He knelt beside her chair, seeing the understanding in her young eyes. "What kind of place?" "By the creek," she said, "where the morning glories grow. Grace says they'd like it there." Cole's throat tightened. The creek on their new land reminded him of his old one, but the memories didn't hurt like they used to. "I think they would." Sarah moved to stand behind her sister, one hand on Mary's shoulder. "We could put a bench there, make it beautiful." The deed's ink had dried, making their names permanent. Cole touched each one gently. His girls, his second chance at being the father he was meant to be. The man he'd been 5 years ago would never have imagined this moment, this healing. "Got something else too," he said, reaching into his coat. The papers were worn, carried close to his heart for weeks. "If you're sure about wanting my name for real." Sarah took the adoption papers with trembling hands. Mary crowded close to see. Grace clutched tight. They read together, these girls, who'd survived so much, loss and abandonment, fear and violence, only to find family in the most unexpected place. "It means no one can ever take you away," Cole explained softly. "Means you're mine, proper and legal, if that's what you want." Mary launched herself at him, as she'd taken to doing when words weren't enough. Sarah moved more carefully, but her hug was just as fierce. They held each other, this family built from broken pieces and second chances. "Does this mean I can call you Pa?" Mary whispered against his shirt. Cole's heart swelled. "If you like." "What about me?" Sarah asked, trying to sound grown up but not quite managing it. "I'm 12 now, almost 13. You can call me whatever feels right," Cole said, holding them both closer. "Got all the time in the world to figure it out." Through the window, they could see the ranch spreading out before them. Pastures, waiting for horses, fields ready for planting, all of it full of promise. The morning sun caught the creek's surface, making it glitter like Emma's laugh used to. Mary set Grace on the table, positioning her carefully near the deed. "Grace says we should have a celebration, a proper family one." "Think that can be arranged," Cole said. The town had become part of their healing too, embracing these two girls who'd helped bring down Kingston's empire of corruption. Mrs. Henderson had already promised to bake a special cake. Sarah picked up the pen, her hand steady as she signed the adoption papers. Mary followed, her signature careful and proud. Cole signed last, making it official. Not just a ranch deed, but a family deed, a promise written in ink and sealed with love. "Pa," Mary said, testing the word, "Grace wants to know if she can help name the horses when they come." Cole laughed, the sound free and easy now. "Reckon she's earned that right." "We all have." 1 year to the day since Cole had ridden in seeking revenge, the family Bible lay open on the kitchen table. Its leather cover had been carefully restored, the fire-damaged edges mended with patient care. Inside, the family record page held both old memories and new beginnings. Sarah's steady hand had copied the original entries above. Cole Blackwood, married to Sarah Hayes, blessed with Emma Rose. Below that, she'd added their own names, Sarah and Mary Blackwood. Adopted with love by Cole, spring of 1876. And beside it, in Mary's careful script, Grace, beloved by all. "Pa!" Mary's voice carried from outside. "The morning glories are blooming!" Cole looked up from the Bible, watching through the window as his younger daughter tended the flowers they'd planted by the memorial bench. The creek caught the morning light, peaceful now, its waters nurturing new growth instead of carrying old pain. Sarah rode in from checking the horses, her skill with them growing daily. At 13, she was becoming the woman she'd always had the strength to be. The cavalry had already purchased 3 of their trained mounts, with contracts for more. "Town's getting ready for the celebration," she said, hanging up her hat. "Mrs. Henderson's baking enough pies to feed half the territory." The 1-year anniversary of Kingston's arrest had become something of a holiday in these parts. Not just for justice served, but for the way it had transformed their community. The bank operated honest now, helping folks instead of breaking them. "Grace wants to wear her new dress," Mary announced, coming in with dirt on her knees and joy in her eyes. "The one with the blue flowers like in the picture." Cole smiled, knowing which picture she meant. The old daguerreotype of his first Sarah and Emma sat on the mantel beside their new family photograph, not competing, just completing, teaching them all that hearts could expand to hold both grief and joy. "Think that can be arranged," he said, watching Sarah help her sister clean up. Their bond had grown stronger over the year, protected by the safety Cole provided. They still had nightmares sometimes, all of them did, but they faced them together now. The Bible's pages held other treasures, Emma's last drawing, preserved between its pages. Mary's first letter calling Cole Pa. The pressed flowers from their memorial garden, even a letter from Thomas Maxwell, writing from somewhere back east, thanking them for giving his nieces the home he couldn't. Pa? Sarah's voice was thoughtful. Could we add something? To the family record. Cole nodded, dipping the pen in ink. Sarah wrote carefully, "On this day, we celebrate 1 year as a family, born from loss, but strengthened by love. The past is honored, the present is cherished, and the future is bright with promise." Mary added her own line below, her letters carefully formed. Grace says love makes a family, and she is never wrong about important things. Outside, their ranch stretched peaceful and prosperous. The barn was full of horses, the gardens thriving, the house warm with life. They'd built something here that was more than just a refuge. It was a testament to the healing power of love over hatred, of family found instead of lost. Cole picked up the pen last, his hand steady as he wrote, "A father's heart can grow to hold more love than he ever imagined possible. Emma and Sarah watch over us still, teaching us that joy can grow from sorrow and that family is more than blood. It's the choice we make every day to love and protect each other." Mary leaned against him as he wrote. Grace clutched to her chest. Sarah stood close on his other side, her strength and grace so like his first Sarah's. They were his miracle, these girls who had turned him from vengeance's shadow back into a father's light. "Time for the celebration," Sarah said softly, touching the Bible's restored cover. They walked out together into the bright morning, leaving the Bible open on the table. The family record page caught the sunlight, old ink and new shining together, telling the story of death and rebirth, of revenge transformed into redemption, of a family forged from the ashes of the past and flourishing in the soil of love. Behind them, Grace sat in her special chair, watching over their home with her. Button eyes and gentle smile, guardian of all their memories, both bitter and sweet as they walked together into their shared tomorrow.